Hello everyone and welcome to the first part of the finale proper for Backtracking Season 5, and we start with Joan Jett's debut album, Joan Jett? Bad Reputation? Yes. Released in 1980, it would come out as self-titled through Ariola and Black Art Records, but it would be re-released in 1981 under its new name of Bad Reputation through Boardwalk Records. I don't have a lot else to say that hasn't already been said, which is fine by me because the intro of this album took way too long, so let's begin with the first song on the album titled Bad Reputation. It's sort of clear to hear that even though Joan Jett is on her own, a lot of the Runaways' influence is still on this album. And I guess that's what she needed given how harsh the fallout of the Runaways was, so I'm happy that she soldiered on. I mean, man, I'm trying to think of the right words to describe the album's sound. It sounds sort of like what the Runaways would be like if it were just Joan Jett. I mean, she has a backing band, the Roll-Ups, before the Black Hearts were a thing, to help, but Joan herself definitely takes centre stage. Which works as she is definitely more comfortable this way, I feel. She sounds more confident, more assertive, something no doubt helped by her being more out of her teen years by that point. And she shows more versatility here too, changing with the album's pacing as it switches from more punk-edge tunes to glitzy glam rock and even meshes the two brilliantly. It's produced nicely too, and it adds some good elements that still sound nice even by today's standards. The lyrics cover the breakup of the Runaways, relationships and sexuality in a admittedly pretty fun scope. My favourite song goes to Doing Alright with the Boys. Joan Jett's first album, mostly on her own, sort of, maybe, is packed with a lot of fun songs that sound amazing even today, with a strong performance from the woman herself as well. Next is Joan's second album, I Love Rock and Roll. Released in 1981, it would come out through Boardwalk Records and it would be produced by Kenny Laguna, Richie Cordell and Glenn Kolotkin. So yeah, this album was made pretty damn quickly after Bad Reputation, with only a 10-month gap between the two. And of course the previous album was successful, but one fateful note at the Palladium in New York City would be described as the performance that defined Joan Jett as a serious talent. The album itself begins with the title track, which would also be my first Joan Jett song, and it would become a staple of Joan's live shows for ages even today, becoming a chart topper for a long stretch in 1982 too. Now, to be honest, in terms of this album's style, there aren't really many huge differences in terms of that, except that this one has a more punk rock lean to it. Which is odd as there's more producers at work for this one, but then again maybe they all work together well enough to give this album its edge. But this album was wildly successful, and upon listening to it for myself it is easy to see why. Again, it might feel rushed in places, but it does lend itself to a faster pacing that takes itself a bit more seriously, and it has a lot of fun with it all. It's instrumentally put together nicely with some more solo work, and everyone performs really well, which helps as this was the first official Joan Jett album to have the Black Hearts involved. Lyrically, it goes over Joan's past and things like rock, love and conformity, when it's not a cover song, that is. My favourite song goes to I Love Rock and Roll. All in all, the album is fun, well produced, and sure, it feels like a retread sometimes, but it's a really good retread nonetheless. Next is Joan Jett's third album. The gag returns on a different scale. Released in 1983, it came out through many different labels in many different countries, and it was produced by Joan Jett, Richie Cordell, Greg Kolotkin, and Kenny Laguna. I don't have too much information for this one, but there was a plan to have more cover songs here, much like there was on the previous two albums. This one does still have a cover of a Runaway song though, so not that much has changed. The album starts with the song titled Fake Friends, and from that alone, this album has a different feel. It's some of the hard rock and punk stuff that was on rock and roll, but at the same time it has some of the influences from her debut as well. Which is odd to say, as Fake Friends, which would also become the album's major single and even have a music video, was advised against by Kenny Laguna. The song is still good in my opinion, but it didn't really chart well, and it was apparently the label that wanted to keep the song on the album. So it looks like Kenny was right, but still I dig the song personally. As the album goes on, it does capture some of the later parts of the Runaways' work in terms of structure, with more glam and pop influences and faster, more fun riffs. It does also include the usage of trombones and saxophones, which is a first for Joan's solo work, and the album's pacing is more evened out and measured this time too. The lyrics talk about romance, familial issues and relationships, so not a lot different honestly. My favourite song goes to I Love Playing With Fire. The album is only a few steps forward in some areas, and at least the pacing and production are nice, and Joan is having a nice time, so it's still really good shit all around. And finally, for part 1, we cover Joan Jett's fourth album, Glorious Results of Misspent Youth. Released in 1984, it would come out through a lot of labels in a lot of countries, and it was produced mainly by Kenny Laguna, with several others helping too. So yeah, as you may have surmised from the small time gap, this album did not take that long to make. Goodness does that show, but I'll talk more about that later on. The first two songs of this album are covers of a Runaway song and then a Gary Glitter song, so we'll focus on the first actual original song of the album, titled Frustrated. The song is a pretty good encapsulation of my feelings towards this album, as it suffers from a lot of really bad problems. Maybe I'm being too harsh too early, and this isn't the first time that Joan has put out something really quick after another album, but 1/3 of this album's songs are covers that gives the game away. Even most of the original songs make Joan sound the most commercialised that she's ever been, and normally I'm not blind to the fact that all music is at the end of the day commercialised. But it's shit like this that really breaks my suspension of disbelief in that regard. It's a sad case of too many cooks taking a piss in the broth and trying to sell it champagne. The lyrics really don't go over anything new, with the typical topics of missing someone, wanting to be free, yada yada yada. The production is shockingly bad too, feeling as rushed as the album's sloppy and dragged out structure. Joan still sounds good, but even I can't forgive some of the creative choices on this album. My favourite song goes to Long Time. Glorious results result in something less than glorious, but Joan is at least trying to have fun with it. But you can only have so much fun when someone is taking a dump in your hand and asking you to turn it into a decent album. So that will about end it for part 1. Sorry to end it on a bit of a downer. I will see you hopefully Friday for part 2, where I'll be covering From Good Music to Notorious. And the next thing you'll see for after that will be Cutting Edge on Friday night, the first AVW specific pay-per-view. It's going to be awesome. See you soon for part 2 of this. As always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye bye.